Let's talk to Chuck. Chuck, you're talking to Eric and V. What would you like to talk about today?
Hey, Eric. Happy birthday, V.
Thank you. Yay. Nice to talk to you. I heard your call last week.
Yeah, Eric, sorry for that absolute disaster of a call last week. I was suffering from first-time caller jitters, and so thanks for taking this one.
You have no idea. Watch the early episodes of Talk Heathen. I'm a wreck. And I have the most annoying nervous laugh. It's terrible. But go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
Okay. It's an argument against natural selection being the chief agent of change. It comes from Origin of Species, Chapter 10. In Chapter 10...
okay. Well, hold on. I appreciate your giving that. I just want to make sure that I'm following. So your statement is that you don't think that naturalism is defined as what?
No. The argument is what the paleontologists were coming to Darwin with. He mentioned this in Darwin in Origin of Species, Chapter 10, under the heading on the sudden appearance of whole groups of allied species. And what they're telling him, they pointed out to him, and he says, the sudden matter in which whole groups of allied species come into the fossil record has been urged by several paleontologists, Sedgwick, Agassiz, and Pictet, as a valid theory against the theory of transmutation. And then it continues, if species, really did come into the record suddenly, that would be a valid, argument against that. That's the premise. That's the first premise. Second premise.
Well, hold on. Just so that we can follow along with you.
Yeah.
So you're saying, just to be clear, that if you can show that species popped into existence out of nothing, then that would be evidence against them having evolved naturally, right? That it just kind of poofing into existence gets rid of all of the bajillions of generations before it that led up to its existence, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're talking about like a complex creature or something. Okay, so if you're talking about the creation of that thing, right, the poofing into existence, that's not evolution at all. That's abiogenesis. So I just want to put a pin in that. So if we talk about the beginnings of things, we can refer back to that and go, well, that's abiogenesis. That's not evolution specifically.
Right. Also, transmutation is a disproven hypothesis as well. I believe it's a different version of what we've come to understand evolution is. I believe it's more of a one thing actually grows or becomes another thing in its lifetime, which is not accurate.
Oh yeah. And also I think was it my call with you that you were talking about evolution being, that other Lamarckian evolution? Was that you?
Yeah, that was my first abomination of it.
I appreciate that you listened back. That means a lot. We do the same.
Also, for everyone else out there, the fact that you brought actual sources and hey, this is where you find this claim. This is the thing. I love that. That's amazing. Everyone should do exactly what you did. Maybe not read it word for word, because that does take a little bit of time, but actually being able to say, hey, here is where it is. Here is the book. Here is the page. Here's what it says. That's amazing. So kudos.
And actually, for people who just want to bone up on that, I think that they should probably know that V has a YouTube channel as well that goes over that kind of stuff.
All about research.
Yeah.
Yeah. How to skeptic.
So.
But yeah, I do want to make sure that before we move on, Chuck, I do want to make sure that we're on the same page here, that while Darwin did create a very usable framework for how to view evolution, he wasn't the one who came up with it. And we have disproven some of the stuff in Origin of Species and expanded upon and refined a whole lot more stuff. So nobody who is learning about evolution is learning about it necessarily from Origin of the Species, except in a historical sense.
It's exactly like somebody looking at psychology and only reading Freud.
Right. It's a valuable piece, and it put us in a position to learn more. But we are not saying that Darwin is always correct and only Darwin's work is acceptable. So as you're reading through, I think it's good to read it. I think that it's very valuable, and I'm glad that you are. But saying, hey, Darwin is wrong here, we're willing to say, yeah, sure, I guess. Like, we learned more since then. So just for future reference and for the audience, if they're interested in that.
Yeah. So let's dive into the rest of what you want.
Yeah.
Sure. What would be a good book? I know Jerry Coyne of University of Chicago has written "Why Evolution is True." Would you suggest that would be a good source?
I honestly don't know what the best sources would be for people who are just kind of getting into that. I do know that as far as YouTube goes, which is kind of more my speed right now, Aaron Ra, ARONRA, because people were confused about how to spell that before, and Viced Rhino, VICED, Rhino, are both really good basic level, like, hey, here's a claim that a lot of Christians make about evolution and creationism. Here's why it's wrong. Here's the background and all of the phylogeny and all of that. So I would say if you're interested in that, those are two channels to check out. In addition to this one.
Yeah, as far as books are concerned, I think that I would suggest The Blind Watchmaker by Dawkins. The interesting thing about Dawkins... The interesting thing about Dawkins is as an author, he's fantastic. As a scholar, he's fantastic. He looked at a lot of these assertions about evolution, and instead of tweeting it, a terrible response, he decided, no, I'm going to write an entire freaking book. Here's the response. Now he has Twitter. That's a terrible thing. But check the book. The book is pretty darn useful, specifically when it comes to addressing a lot of the claims that have come from kind of Christian conservative groups against evolution.
Doesn't he have a chapter punctuating punctuationalism? I think it's chapter 9.
Dude, it has been like 8 years since I've read it myself. You could probably school me in it if you've read it sooner. But hopefully that's a good resource.
I think I read it. Yeah. Anyway, again, the central argument was that natural selection is not adequate adequate as to describe the abrupt manner in which species come around. And so since Darwin, you've had different theories come up. In 53 major features of evolution, you had G.G. Simpson of Harvard come up with quantum evolution, which is really interesting. We've got species.
Well, hold on. You said something that I think is underlying the point that you're making, and that is that you think that what we've observed does not gel with our understanding of evolution. Is that correct?
It doesn't gel with natural selection as being the mechanism of evolution.
Okay.
My point is that there's some other mechanism, again, like G.G. Simpson, his mechanism was quantum evolution.
So what I'm going to say there is...
Gould came up with punctuated equilibrium. So again, the point is it's got to be something other than natural selection.
Okay. So how did you rule out natural selection?
Because, again, I believe that the time to believe something is when there's evidence for it. With natural selection, you're supposed to, Darwin described it as, needing innumerable transitional forms.
Freud thought that people were anal retentive. I mean, there are things that we can find wrong about these authors. What I'm specifically wondering about is our understanding currently of evolution is different from what Darwin wrote about. And from what I understand and from what I've read, I do have a lay understanding of evolution and the time that is required to get to where we are and in an evolutionary way it looks like that has been there and it fleshes itself out. So I don't know why you think it's not sufficient. Well, how did you determine that that's not sufficient?
Yeah, Andrew H. Knoll is very good on this. He's got a book, Life on a Young Planet, that paleontologist Don Prothero uses in his book. Knoll doesn't believe that Earth is young. He just says that for most of Earth's history, we were at the single cell level.
Okay.
And then about 635 million years ago, then we got to the Ediacara fauna, and they were around till the beginning of the Cambrian.
Yeah.
So the Cambrian.
You can just say, I don't think it was long enough.
Well,
no.
Take a look at peer criticisms. I do that with every source that I want to.
Sure. Yeah. And again, these are a good book on this is Panda's Thumb by Gould. Look in the chapter, The Episodic Nature of Evolution, I think it's called, and he points out that
okay. So you're wanting to talk about the failure of evolution. Even if we granted that, though, just really quickly.
No. It's not the failure of evolution. It's the failure of natural selection.
Natural selection.
The mechanism as the driver of evolution.
Okay. So what evidence do you have? Do you have another mechanism, or are you just saying that that naturalism doesn't explain? Do you have another?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. What is that?
Yeah. The mechanism that was accepted in England until 1859, the mechanism would be God.
Okay, perfect. How much evidence do you have for God in that specific field?
It definitely has to be more than the evidence we have for natural selection, though.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just have a very, very selective way of understanding reality. You said the evidence has to be there. Sure. So how much more evidence is there for God in the field of evolution?
Sure.
Yeah. In the field of evolution.
Yeah.
We've got number one. We've got species. They're basically species have just a few gears. You've got speciation that almost always comes about in an instant.
Nope.
That's not how that works.
No. Yeah. Are you talking about?
These are not. This is not evidence for something. This is evidence against something, and I'm going to combat the evidence.
It is evidence for something. No, if the effect.
How's that evidence for God?
Reasoning. If the effect exists, the cause also does.
Okay, hold on. If you were to plot that out on an actual graph, that is absolutely wrong. Let's be super clear.
It's not true
let's say you were right. And I know that Aaron's going to scream at the TV when he hears me say this, but if we were just to grant that you were right for a second, that speciation occurs immediately. And again, I don't think that's true, and we can talk about that, but let's just say that was true. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we were to just say that was true, my response, hold on a second, Druck. If my response was, I think that there is a spaceship that is hiding behind the moon, and that spaceship flashed out some kind of technology that we don't understand to make it happen. How would you determine that it was God or the spaceship? Because I think what you're saying is equally evidence for the spaceship as the God.
Let's talk about let's talk about species coming about. Now, again, the argument was that natural selection is not sufficient for the production of species. If it were,
hold on, we're talking specifically. We granted this to you, Chuck. We're granting you this argument so we can move to the next step. The next step is you giving us evidence of the supernatural claim. And so
I'll give you evidence of the supernatural. Okay. You can find this in Michael Shermer's book, Why Darwin Matters. Go to page 54. he calls it the best evidence for God, and that's the fine-tuning of the universe.
Okay, so you think that the fine-tuning argument is supernatural evidence for the way you're understanding evolution. And that supernatural evidence, the fine-tuning argument, is way more evidence than the evidence we have for evolution. Is that correct, Chuck? Do you think that the fine-tuning argument...
No, stop changing things. No, let's take all the arguments together.
Well, a pile of crap is just as bad as a single turd. I mean, dude,
this is not a turd. This is not a turd. Michael Shermer calls it the best evidence for God.
Okay, then when we have Michael Shermer on, you can talk to him about it. But you're talking to us.
We disagree with Michael Shermer.
You can check out page 54 of
if that's what
why Darwin mattered.
Well, we disagree that would be compelling evidence for God.
Yeah, the fine-tuning argument.
So here's the thing, Chuck. I understand where you're coming from. I think that we still have more, even if there are holes, we still have more evidence for natural selection being the process of speciation, as opposed to God as the mechanism.
Yeah, the fine-tuning
especially
argument.
If we're moving with look at the trees.
Yeah, I disagree with you about the natural selection thing. Because paleontologists have understood natural selection to be not possible for not as an adequate driver of evolution.
That's go to a university and tell that to people who spend their lives studying this stuff and see how far that flies.
Also, don't just look at paleontology. People are doing this with like fruit flies and bacteria constantly. Like right now.
Paleontology
that's one.
Doesn't paleontology tell you how evolution happened?
No, it's one component. So here's the thing: when we are looking far, far back to the point where everything is gone except for fossilized bones, then yes, that's the only thing we have physically to indicate. But we also are employing these methods currently in the present with things we can look at actively. And that's not paleontology, that's biology.
These are all different fields of science that are intersecting over what we're observing.
The whole reason we have a pandemic right now is because evolution works in the way we understand it to work. The virus is mutating and changing in active form, and that's the reason we can't create a vaccine for it.
And again, it's not a single living thing, but generations happening very, very rapidly.
Right.
And those ones that are able to survive whatever hostile environment are the ones that pass on those traits.
Right. So what we're saying is, don't just look at paleontology. That's certainly a component and it's a valuable one. But you can say, okay, paleontologists can't find fossils in this time span, but you have to look at what's happening now currently in labs all over the world with very, very highly educated scientists actively using our understanding of natural selection to create new species.
Though, to be fair, on the tiny level.
On a tiny, like microscopic level. Like
but it's proof of concept. I mean,
right, exactly. It's
definitely
the same mechanism.
It's definitely a whole lot better than look at the trees.
When they get a microscopic mechanism to turn into a mockingbird, and then I'll believe it.
Try again, buddy. if that's the case, then how about this? When you can supernaturally teleport here, I will believe your claim about God. Is that fair?
I'm not a supernatural agent.
And what I put on you is a irrelevant expectation that has nothing to do with the point. Right? That's you gave me what? When you make a thing turn into a minnow. Do you understand what the definition of evolution is? Do you think that when I can pull a petri dish and then all of a sudden turn something into a minnow? Do you think that that's how evolution works? Do you think that minnows pop out of fucking petri dishes every once in a while?
No, I don't. What I would expect is to have an extremely long record of minnow changing, but we don't have an extremely long record of
The problem there is we need to be aware and scientific enough and literate enough to be able to keep those records. And these things have happened so slowly over such long periods of time that that's not possible right now.
Yes, I agree. I agree that they're according to natural selection. Okay. They should have. They would happen slowly. So with all of our fossils, we should have evidence of that.
We do. Look up Aaron Ra and Vice Rhino the way he told you. I think it's a great resource. Look up
Stephen Jay Gould.
Yeah, Chuck. Also, please, especially if you're watching this back, write this down because this is really important. Saying there's a problem with evolution is not.
I'm not saying there's a problem with evolution. I'm not saying there's a problem with evolution.
Okay,
I've never said there was.
There's a problem with naturalism being the agent of change.
No. There's a problem with natural selection being the agent of change. It's got to be some other agent.
Okay, I just said that. So having a problem with naturalism being the agent of change.
Natural selection.
Or naturalism.
Yes.
I think he said no.
I said natural selection. Okay. If you can come up with another agent.
Oh, Chuck, hold on.
Then
having a problem with that. I have a statement that I'm trying to get to. I feel like I'm stuttering. When you point that out, it has absolutely nothing to do and does not back up your claim. You need to have evidence of your claim. And pointing at the other guy saying it's not good enough is not evidence of your claim. Please call in with evidence of your claim. Because if all you do is point at other people and say, if you're
no, let's go back to the beginning of the call. My claim was that there's not sufficient evidence for natural selection being the agent of change in evolution.
Right, and we moved past that and said, what is your explanation? What is your claim? And what was your claim? That God did it.
The same claim that was made in England prior to 1859.
If I want to go to England and talk to people in England, I will. Chuck, I'm talking to you,
also,
please.
England in the 1800s is not a good metric for really anything.
Yeah. So, Chuck, what is your claim? God did it, right?
Yeah, that would be the natural.
Show me what that evidence looks like next week, and walk me through how we can study that evidence, and we can actually talk about that. V, do you think we can take a good look this week at evidence and how to study evidence and what is considered good evidence?
I'd say that's in my wheelhouse.
I think that sounds perfect.
Okay.
All right. Chuck,
all right. Thanks for calling in, Chuck.
And by the way, Chuck.
Hey, thanks for the time.
Yeah. Compared to last week, you killed it. You're doing good.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're going to do a whole lot better next week, okay?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Take care. Like I said, first-time caller jitters, I was a mess.
You're
no
good,
worries.
Man. Take it easy.